TV7 Israel News is made possible thanks to your generous donations.
Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening. This is TV7 Israel News, broadcast to you from Jerusalem. U.S. Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio reaffirms Washington's commitment to Israel's qualitative military edge in the Middle East. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu emphasizes that a Palestinian state will not be established. The Mossad Intelligence Agency unveils a large Hamas terror network throughout Europe. U.S. President Donald Trump met last night at the White House with 26 former hostages and praised their heroism. He said it was a religious commandment in Judaism to redeem hostages, and then Trump addressed Matan Angrist and said to him that his captors had abused him because he was a soldier, that he had gone through hell but had not been broken. Before their meeting with President Trump, the former hostages said the battle to bring back all of the hostages was still not over, since there are still 3 deceased hostages in Hamas captivity in the Gaza Strip to date. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave an exclusive interview to a popular Israeli Telegram news channel called Abu Ali Express, during the course of which he was asked about the meeting of Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and U.S. President Donald Trump, and whether reports of the Saudis receiving everything that they had asked for from the Americans effectively weakens Israel's qualitative military edge.
Based on the report, which I had received about the meeting, he did not exactly get everything that he wanted. I will not go into details. I held a lengthy conversation yesterday with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who reiterated the United States' commitment to persist in guaranteeing Israel's qualitative edge in all that relates to the delivery of weapons and munitions to the countries of the Middle East. He also specifically and clearly spoke about the matter of F-35, which I expanded on, and I will not restate my words, but the principle is clear to the American administration. By the way, it is enshrined in law and isn't just a determined policy. It is an American law.
Prime Minister Netanyahu was further asked about Saudi Arabia's demands for a clear path to the establishment of a Palestinian state as a prerequisite for joining the Abraham Accords, which includes normalization of relations between the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the State of Israel.
A Palestinian state won't be established. Simply, it won't be established. Also, if it would come at the expense of normalization, I think, the answer is, a Palestinian state won't be established. It is an existential threat against the State of Israel, and the decisions that were adopted at the United Nations mentioned that a pathway would maybe be created, yes? Maybe a path about evaluating the question of Palestinian sovereignty, if the Palestinian Authority, how can I put it? If the Palestinian Authority turns into Sweden, give or take. If it will implement a list of far-reaching reforms that would eliminate their raison d'etre.
It is interesting to know that the European Union's Commissioner for the Mediterranean, Dubravka Šuica, hosted Palestinian Authority Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa in Brussels yesterday ahead of a meeting of the Palestine Donors Group, which the European Union had established with a 1.6 billion euro expense for the purpose of advancing a multi-annual comprehensive program for Palestinian recovery and resilience, and which practically aims to coordinate, support, and monitor the implementation of a Palestinian Authority reform agenda with focus on fiscal stability, governance, and economic recovery in both the West Bank and Gaza Strip.
Our financial support is linked to the Palestinian Authority reform agenda, which, of course, they committed to implement. We see these reforms as a prerequisite for a viable two-state solution, which is our ultimate goal.
While the European Union spends money on aspirations for reform of the Palestinian Authority, which is plagued by deep-rooted corruption, and support for terrorism as part of its pay-for-slay program, Israel's intelligence agency Mossad, in close cooperation with European intelligence agencies, has uncovered a plot by the Palestinian Islamist Hamas organization to perpetrate acts of terror on European soil.
The announcement our office released about the close cooperation between the Mossad and intelligence and law enforcement agencies in Europe, which has led to the seizure of weapons caches and the arrest of terrorists in Europe as well. These terrorist infrastructures were built by Hamas to carry out attacks against Israeli and Jewish targets. The announcement specifically mentions the cooperation between law enforcement in Germany and Austria, which led to complex counter-terrorism operations and resulting in arrests of terrorists and the discovery of weapons caches. The investigation into the Hamas terror network in Europe is currently also examining the possible involvement of Hamas elements in Turkey in promoting the intention to carry out attacks, some which have already been exposed. This is because Turkey is an operational arena for Hamas operatives in the past and in the present. Mossad and its partners in the Israeli and global intelligence communities will continue to work together to thwart terrorism against Israelis, Jews, and innocent people around the world.
While Israel proactively protects the citizens of its allies, to include Germans, Austrians, and the citizens of many other allies, German authorities have seemingly had enough with foreign nationals who had immigrated to Germany and even gained German nationality and are pushing anti-German values these days to include support for Hamas.
Was das Abnehmen
Regarding the revocation of citizenship in this one case that came to light today, I expressly support it. I also want to make it clear that this is a demand I've made repeatedly in the past, and I personally have repeatedly stated that people who have acquired German citizenship, dual citizens, have committed themselves to our value system. If this was demonstrably a misrepresentation of the facts, and they do not share this value system, which is obvious in this case with a person who is a Hamas supporter, because the right of Israel to exist is not only not shared, but even questioned or denied, then it is clear that this commitment to our value system is not reflected in this person. And then it should also be possible to revoke their citizenship. And I would say that in comparable cases, if we identify them, this should also happen repeatedly.
Meanwhile, turning now to the Hudson Institute in Washington, D.C., where the Israeli Prime Minister's International Affairs Advisor Caroline Glick, in a Q&A session with Dr. Mike Duran, stressed that Turkey would not have any military role as part of the International Stabilization Force for the Gaza Strip, since Ankara effectively supports Hamas.
Are you concerned about the talk, especially in the Turkish press, about having a presence in Gaza? You must be.
We're not concerned. It's not going to happen.
Absolutely not going to happen. Of any kind?
No, I mean, no. Look, there are Turkish NGOs that operate in Israel, you know, so to the extent that they're problematic in Israel, they're problematic, but they're already operating, some of them, in Gaza, and they have been throughout. So I think that that's a different kind of issue, but in terms of military forces, no.
The remarks by Prime Minister Netanyahu's advisor come amid tensions between Ankara and Jerusalem, to include Israel's vehement rejection of Turkey's attempts to entrench militarily in Syria, which Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu asserted in his interview last night Israel was proactively thwarting. Prime Minister Netanyahu further responded to a question on whether Israel was prepared to confront the perceived threat from Turkey.
First and foremost, I hope that this threat will not materialize, but we cannot disregard prospects of this threat. We want a modus vivendi with Turkey. They are very tough. They speak in a very radical way. We pushed back against it. But in practice, I prevented them into southern Syria. They wanted to enter next to our border. I said it will not happen. We also didn't want them to enter into central Syria, in a place that is called T4, and we even bombed this airfield, which was a directive that I gave to our Air Force, and it performed it. So, we are currently maintaining a type of distance, and we are also holding talks with them, beyond the headlines, and we are telling them, look, we have a joint interest to avoid collision. We will always do what is necessary to protect ourselves and to protect our state, but we are first trying to do it through contacts, and if it is possible, great, and also through showcasing determination in the field.
הייתי אומר, הפגנת נחישות מעשית בשטח.
Thank you for watching TV7 Israel News. I would also like to thank you if you are a supporter of TV7 Israel, since all of our productions here are exclusively donation-based, and any support is essentially helping us produce our daily news updates from here in Jerusalem. If you haven't yet supported TV7 Israel, please consider doing so. You can donate via our website at www.tv7israelnews.com. Separately, as ever, pray for our brothers and sisters facing persecution globally, to include Christians persecuted in Nigeria, in China, and elsewhere, as well as the Druze and Christians in southern Syria. And lastly, but certainly not least, pray for the peace of Jerusalem and redemption of Israel. I'm Jonathan Hessen, wishing you a Shabbat Shalom u'mevorach, and God willing, until our next update, Shalom from Jerusalem.